People with childhood PTSD, through no fault of their own, can sometimes have overly strong emotional reactions. And if you were abused or neglected as a kid, you know how this goes. Something hurts your feelings, you have a huge oversized reaction to it, and you know it's so big it's going to create problems if you express those feelings to the people around you. So you start working really hard to pretend that it just didn't happen. You either try to shut down your feelings or you run away from the situation. And it would be great if you could get through life this way, just putting up a facade to pretend that you're not overreacting or running away whenever things get awkward. You could just get a new group of friends every week or two, right? And basically just change yourself at will to fit whatever situation is happening, to not be you. That's how your childhood PTSD is trying to make things go, to just stop the consequences of your emotions at any cost. But as we've all learned through bitter experience, life requires something a little smarter than that, something really hard for us. And that's to hang in there sometimes, even though we're having an emotional reaction, so that we can separate out what's real and appropriate and what might be the trauma coloring the way we see things. And there are some people in situations that you do want to push out of your life, but that's for another video. What I'm talking about today is a strategy for you to be aware when your emotional reactions are taking hold of you, and what you can say or do to handle those situations better, to express yourself when you need to, but take care not to push away the good people you appreciate and who you want in your life, okay? So the first emotional reaction that can push people away is that when we're hurt or disappointed, we disappear. And there are a couple ways we do this. One is we pretend we're fine when we're not fine, and then at some later date, we disappear. Or in some cases, we act fine and disappear like all in the same 5 minutes. But either way, we're pushing people away. So let's take an example. All right, let's say that you and your friend have talked for years about taking a trip together to Mexico. And it was never a firm plan, but it was something that you'd been looking forward to and you assumed it would really happen. And you're eating lunch with your friend just like you do every Thursday, and she tells you, hey, I've got exciting news. I'm gonna go to Mexico with my new boyfriend. And it seems like she doesn't remember that you talked with her about that many times, right? Has that ever happened? So you end up saying, oh, great. And you have a choice in that moment to tell her how you actually feel, or because if you have childhood PTSD and you've had some painful experiences telling people when your feelings are hurt, then out of shame and fear, you might just go silent. You might hide. But either way, again, you're going to push them away. And so you feel like that's happening, right? You fear it and you try to prevent it. And so that's what disappearing is. It's an attempt not to damage the relationship, but unfortunately, it's also going to push people away. But here's what disappearing looks like. You're boiling inside. You can't believe she would do this to you and pretend that she had no memory that you two had this loose plan, that you were going to go to Mexico, and you're fighting tears and your heart is pounding and these emotions are coming up. And somewhere inside, you know the plan, it wasn't firm, and she's probably innocent, but there's this other part of you that's about to slide from sad and feeling kind of sucker punched by this news to angry and mean. Fight response, right? Disappear is flight. This is the fight response. And of course, you know what always happens when the mean part comes out. So you don't want to be mean, so you just stay silent. That's freeze, right? And you just sit in awkward silence with your friend, or you fill the silence with chit chat. That could be fawning, right? But actually, you're not there. You're so far away, you're gone. And as soon as you can get out of the lunch, you find an excuse, you get yourself out of there, and you say, bye, really nice. But then comes the long silence, right? Where you avoid, where you ghost them. And when Thursday rolls around again, you tell her, oh, I'm busy. And the next week she texts you to see if you still want to meet up and have lunch, and you ignore her text this time. And the whole time you're thinking, I should just respond. I should just go. I should quit making such a big deal out of this. I'm going to regret this. I had got to tell her how I feel. But the later it gets that you haven't answered that text, the weirder you feel that it's going to be when you actually do respond or get together. And that's where the temptation comes to just really flee, to really blow the whole thing off. And now you've really pushed her away. And it might be recoverable, but your friend feels hurt now. So even worse, if she calls you the next day to find out what happened, you don't want to take her call. You don't want to hear how she's hurt. You don't know what to say. Or it's worse than that. You do pick up the phone, and this time you do the second CPTSD emotional reaction that pushes people away, and you release a whole boatload of anger on her. Fight. You start out with I statements and feeling words. You go, well, I just feel like we talked about this, right? But then the conversation just rolls over a couple of logs there, and next thing you know, you're blowing up. You're going into accusations and yelling and talking on top of each other. You were hurt, she was hurt, and then you tried to disappear your feelings so hard that what happened is it came out of you like lava, all right? And you say hurtful things, unfair things, things you know are only going to damage the relationship, but it just seems in those moments there's only going to be relief if you can get them said, if you can convince her how hurtful she was. And, she might have been realizing she was inconsiderate by forgetting your plans, but now she just wants to get away, and that wasn't the outcome you wanted. Okay, so let's unpack what just happened here. You were hurt, you tried to disappear instead of talking to her, and then you tried to use anger to get her to recognize your feelings. But all you've got now is someone who wants to put up a wall against you. And she definitely doesn't want to take that trip with you now, right? But if you have a pretty good friendship, then one of you, sooner or later, is going to try to talk things through. And it might even be you who starts it, which I would give you a gold star for. If you're still in the emotional reaction of it, then when you get together for lunch again, even if you start out with kind words and taking responsibility, you're gonna end up doing the third thing that pushes friends away. And that's when your expectations of other people to care about your feelings becomes child-sized. And when I say child-sized, I don't mean like this, I mean like this, which is to say enormous. We have these child expectations. And again, this is not your fault. If you were emotionally neglected by your parents when you were little, it is so normal to have these huge outsized expectations from friends and partners later on. There's just this big neglected, empty space inside. And so when something hurts you there, when people make you feel overlooked or excluded, what they get from you is hit with expectations that you rightfully had as a child, but that are totally inappropriate now that you're an adult. And you're laying it on them. And that doesn't feel good for them. Now, as a child, you needed to feel important and treasured and central to your parents' lives, but with adult friends, there's a time to step aside for them, to have other relationships, to go to Mexico with who they want to go with, and it isn't always going to be with you. Now, when you were a kid, if you had to suppress those feelings of abandonment and just soldier on, it has a way of making you kind of squirrely around plans and inclusion, So your friend taking the trip you wanted to take with her, with someone else, which is okay. It's not like you had dates set. It's not like you had tickets. That would be another story. It triggers a lifetime of pain in you, though. It all comes roaring back in your nervous system. You might not even be conscious. You're just feeling awful. You're sad. You were supposed to be cared for. It's so understandable why feeling left out now is intense. But the thing is, for friends, these expectations, and this was part of yourself, even when the emotions are spilling out and sabotaging everything, these expectations are unreasonable. To your friend, it feels like bullying, or it feels like you're crazy. And that's how we push people away. You know that up here, you can see that a rift is coming, but down here in your heart, it's like a desperate little kid is driving. It's being a kid all over again. It feels in those moments like there's no way to talk it through. There's no good outcome. And the temptation then is to do the fourth CPTSD thing, and that is to vilify your friend, to justify all the struggles you have with handling the feelings or expressing them or working them out, but just writing her off as a bad person. And we do this in 100 ways, right? You're arrogant. You have no idea what other people go through. You're a narcissist. Your boyfriend sucks. And okay, we could go on and on. We point the hurt out here rather than feeling it in here and working on it here. And that's how we do the fifth CPTSD thing, where our pain causes us to not be able to see people. It sucks us into ourselves. We can't see people. And if you're going to have a good friendship, half of that is you being a good friend. And one key property of good friends is that they are capable of feeling happy for their friend when something good happens. We can't be in some mental mathematical model where any happiness they have with someone else is an insult or it robs us of our due with them. And I chose the example of this vacation that, it's sort of a vaguely planned vacation. And then it was forgotten by the friend with the new boyfriend. And I chose this example because that is inconsiderate and it does hurt, but it's the kind of thing that happens all the time between friends. They don't owe us the care that a parent owes to a child. And they can't actually cheat on us because there's no such promise like there would be in a committed romantic relationship. And yet we react like this sort of thing is happening. A friend is someone you support, who you want the best for, and for whom you give forbearance. You give them a little space to make mistakes or to have a misunderstanding. You would never want to force anyone to take a trip with you, right? It wouldn't be friendship. It wouldn't even be fun. I've been on trips like that. And so the solution in this situation is to be a person who has several friends, who's not relying on one person to be your everything. That way you can take responsibility that you have a dream, you want to take a trip, and if it's not this person, maybe you'll try that person, maybe you'll go by yourself. But you're not going to put responsibility for your happiness on your friend. Now, was she disappointing? Yes. So here's what you might have done earlier in all this, back at that first lunch where she first told you that she was going to Mexico. All right, so your friend says, guess what? New boyfriend and I are going to Mexico. Okay, so just like before, you get a strong emotional reaction. And you grew up and abused and neglected, so that's going to happen. Okay, but here's what you might say. Oh my gosh, that's so great. You must be so excited. Now, you're expressing that you want the best for her, even though you're not feeling it right now. And then you can say, I have to admit, I'm having a bit of an emotional reaction about it right now, and I'm totally happy for you, but for me, I'm kind of crushed. I don't know if you remember, but you and I talked about a trip to Mexico. Do you remember that? And then your friend might go, oh yeah. She probably knew, right? She probably did remember all along. But she'd go, oh yeah, well, I didn't know we had an actual plan. All right, now that's fair, right? And then even if you still feel all your strong emotions, you can speak out of your highest values and know that the way your feelings are going to come back to earth later is going to go better if you can be true to your values now while they're just going crazy. You're not acting directly on your intense feelings. You're acting on your values, that you want to be fair, that you want to be level-headed, that you're going to give yourself time to think about things, to see what you need to express if you need to. It doesn't ever have to be like in this minute. I do think there's a lot to be said for speaking up in the moment. But sometimes as people with childhood PTSD, we need time to kind of think this through. Maybe use our tools to calm the triggers down. Maybe check in with a mentor or a coach or a friend. Kind of go, am I being unreasonable here? So in this case, I would just say, I've created an example where it's hurtful, but the right thing to do is to give her your blessing because you can't force her on the trip. And if you want to stay friends, you got to find a way to work with this and be an independent spirit who has several people you could make such a plan with or do it by yourself. Okay, so this is a friend you care about, you want her in your life. And so something you could say is, the way that I feel so bad about this makes me see that I really need a vacation. And I'm going to take some time to figure out how I can do that. It sounds really fun what you're doing. I hope you have a great time. And there it is. It's really graceful. You've been honest. You haven't suppressed your feelings. You haven't squished it down and tried to, obliterate yourself in order to be accepted by somebody. You've said how you feel. You've also been gracious and loving. And if you watch a lot of my videos, you know what I'm going to suggest next, right? Yes, the daily practice techniques. So that you can move some of those strong emotions about the past, about the present, and just keep them processing and moving so that you can feel courageous and optimistic enough to take positive steps in your life. Maybe you don't want to be friends with this person. Maybe that will become clearer. But if your pattern has been to push people away, it's worth a try. To live through your values of wanting to be the best, to operate in the best interest of your friends, and also for yourself. So she has a good life, and you have a good life. And you come together not out of resentful obligation or neediness, but freely, because you both want the best for each other. Now, if you think childhood trauma might have affected you, you can take my quiz. It is linked down below in the description section. That can be a helpful thing. The free techniques, the daily practice I talked about, are linked down below as well. They're under every video I make. And if you want tips on how to have good friendships, I've got a video lined up for you right here, and I will see you soon.